Hey guys, what is up and welcome back to another video. Today we are here for episode number 113 of Goattville Updates. And today we're here almost in the countryside of Goattville looking at a build that is maybe a little bit different than what I normally build. Located just a small step outside of my mostly modern city in an area of the world that I haven't added to in a good 5 years, I have this small yet also quite impressive Gothic cathedral. This build is however only the first part of a much larger project I have in mind for this area, which will be a monastery. And since the monastery would kind of be centered around this cathedral here in the middle, I figured this would be a good place to start the project. I've had the idea to build a cathedral in this world for quite a while now, and at first I planned to have it in the city because most cathedrals are usually located in city centers, and in the normal world it actually makes a bit of sense for them to be there. But since I couldn't see a good place to build it in the downtown that I have, I had the cathedral project shelved for a good while. But that wasn't until recently when I stumbled upon some pictures of Melrose Abbey in Scotland, and the idea of a grand rural monastery seemed like the perfect solution for where to put this build that I've thought about for such a while now. Now before I started building anything, I put together this scale model right outside of the site, nearby the main road here, and this is a rough plan for the entire monastery build, and as you can clearly see, there's still a lot more beyond the cathedral to build before this whole area would be called finished. But you could also see how the cathedral would be the more important aspect of this collective build, which is why I've gone and built it first. Then also off of this main road is another smaller road which leads towards the rail yard, but cozily offshooting not too far down the road is this secluded forested driveway that leads right up towards the cathedral. Monasteries are oftentimes found in rather remote areas, which is why I've set up this build a good bit separated from the normal roads and also surrounded by an abundance of trees here. Then nearing the top of the hill is where the railroad passes over, and farther down the road you can see the facade of the cathedral almost neatly placed in the clearing of these trees. The tracks going along here is also a really nice idea, I think, adding a charming bit of detail and character to the landscape. And then atop the shallow summit of this small hill, which I've built, is the cathedral, which is sort of acting as the metaphorical center of the monastery, as I mentioned before. It measures about 80 meters long and 50 meters tall, which isn't all too big for a usual cathedral, but in comparison to the other real-life builds I've modeled this off of, such as Melrose Abbey and St. David's Cathedral in Wales, it's turned out just about right for being at a realistic scale. This short gravel path leads you up to these couple stairs and onto this small elevated square I've set as a small forward courtyard, and through one of these side doors it takes you right inside. Pardon the dramatic music I have started up in the background. I almost think it would be too inappropriate not to include. These doors at the front lead you right into the nave, where we have an open hall, free of any columns or any other large structural elements, with just the sanctuary being at the end, like usual, just past the transept. Being a relatively smaller cathedral on both the inside and outside, I didn't feel like columns through the middle or even buttresses on the outside would fit well into the build, so that's why I've kept the main interior like this. I know that the absence of those features makes it seem a little unrealistic according to traditionally feasible techniques of your typical Gothic architecture, but dealing with the scale of Minecraft blocks as well as the liberty of not having gravity to worry about, I'm thinking I can just get away with not including them, even though I did just give it away by explaining it, you know. The side walls have some basic detail to imply some structural support, and are of course paired with these large windows in between. They're facing east and west, allowing for some very dramatic rays of both morning and evening light to fill the whole length of the interior. A little more than halfway down is the transept. I've learned a lot of the cathedral vocabulary during the construction of this build, and that's just a name for these two small parts that stick out from the building, making it cruciform. The one on the west is just filled with these candles and has a door on the side which leads out to the cemetery, which we'll get around to later. And then on the other side is a similar setup with some more candles, and also the closest thing Minecraft could allow for a human-formed statue at this scale. And here in the middle is the sanctuary, raised on this quartz platform and decorated with the usual Catholic sanctuary setup. I tried my best with the furniture and think I got something pretty good with it. I know the actual torches acting as the candles here seems a bit archaic for Minecraft, but they do a good job for illuminating the area, especially during the nighttime, so I'm willing to keep them there. In the windows in the background of the sanctuary is the only place where I've used stained glass in this build, and I think it's a nice touch for this area, even with how vibrant the colors of the stained glass are in this texture pack. keeping them only at this location and using the more pale variants of the stained glass do good at adding some character to the build while also not seeming to take away too much from the atmosphere of the Gothic Cathedral. And then at the back of the sanctuary is a small opening that leads to this small area in the back, where there are a couple small chapels set up in these narrow rooms. They're nice little details that I've seen plenty of times in cathedrals from real life, but I've just got 2 chapels here, but they do good at adding an additional level of depth to both the inside and outside form of this build. And here in between the 2 of them is the organ, which was just barely able to fit into this space. There was even less space towards the front, which is where I suppose most church organs usually go, but I think it also works back here. The black stone walls are meant to represent the pipes going up, but a much better design that I wanted to do at first was to use banners with this pipe-like design on them, but unfortunately, again, because of the ray tracing, it makes it so that the designs don't appear on banners, so instead we've had to revert to the traditional way of making this sort of thing. Then right below the platform for the organ is a staircase which leads down into the crypt. Now the crypt has 2 levels and greatly expands on the interior of this place, so before we go down there, I'm instead going to go back to the front and finish showing around the other parts of the main floor of this build, and then we'll come back and look through it towards the end of the video. We'll go all the way back towards the front doors, where through this small, almost hidden door for the west tower, will give us a small spiral staircase that will start the path for getting to the few upper levels. This first staircase just takes you up 1 floor on this side, before opening to this narrow bridge which takes you over to the east tower. Then in here is another spiral staircase that takes you up to a ladder here, which just simply leads you up to the platform right below where the tower's bell is. You can see right up there through the fences is where I have a large bell built with the chain coming down in the corner to imply some kind of functionality. The views from here of the rest of the cathedral and the surrounding landscape are also quite nice, especially for a build so unique to this world. Then back down the ladder and to the right is a door which takes you onto another narrow bridge, and through the door on the other end is just a small space with a ladder that'll take you up to the other bell platform. We'll go back again to the other tower, and just a few steps down here, another door will take you outside to this walkway, which runs along the higher up windows of the nave. These doors at the end take you inside for just a small bit, where there's just enough space for a balcony overlooking this part of the transept, then through the other doors, and we're back outside. Now the reason I've taken you all the way down this pathway is because here is where a bridge connects from this pathway over to the clock tower, which is something that I don't think I've mentioned yet about this build, but is probably something that you probably would have already noticed. Then going into the clock tower is a spiral wooden staircase which goes all the way up to the top where there's some fake machinery for the clock faces, and then also down a couple floors and back to the ground level. There's a door right in the corner that takes you out and into this part of the building, which is just outside the actual cathedral. This part we're in now at least would be called the sacristy, I think. And along this hallway are a couple sets of doors that take you outside, and at the end it connects to the cathedral, right about where the sanctuary is. And down this hallway there are a couple rooms I have in this area. The first one is really just a storage room with a variety of things scattered about here and in the closets in the back. Then right across the hall is a small room for a priest, or maybe even a bishop, whoever's in charge here. And then at the end of the hallway is a door which takes you out into the courtyard. What really only inspired me to add this feature was simply from the one thing I could remember about a Minecraft cathedral tour that Corrales had made, maybe some 5 years ago. I remember a view in particular from the video that showed the cathedral from the view of the courtyard, or maybe with it in like the foreground or something, but I thought it was a really nice detail and it added a lot of depth to me, to seeing the form of it all, so that was the focus when making this myself. And the views from here I think all turned out well, just like I was hoping for from the one big vision I had when starting this build. Another set of doors take you back outside, and on the left is another small room apparently used for some storage, but could also be multi-purpose I imagine. I didn't have much space for many rooms to have a specific purpose, so I've mostly just left it implied. Going back into the hallway there's yet another storage room, but since it's just a closet I suppose it's okay. On this wall here are some windows that are already getting some nice views made for them with the creation of just that first building of the monastery. Then finally along the front end of the hallway are a set of restrooms, which is quite an important detail because I don't think I've ever made space for restrooms before in the few churches I've ever built before in Minecraft, so it's good that I finally made place to include them this time. And then that's it for the ground floor. This hallway takes you to the base of the east tower and right back to the nave. and we'll also finally head back to where we left off many minutes ago, behind the sanctuary, where there's the short, eerie, almost macabre-like staircase that leads you down into the crypt. And the catacombs too, I put catacombs down there too. Now it gets a little scary down there, but that could also just be me. I built it without the intent to make it creepy, but since it turned out like this anyway, I figured it was destiny, and I haven't tried to change it, so that's the simple explanation for why this place is looking perhaps like it's from a horror adventure map. There's something of another church layout here in the middle, just like the one above, and then surrounding are several separate chapels and storage rooms, and of course plenty of narrow tunnels connecting them all to give off a maze-like pattern to the layout and make it seem even more large and complex. Towards the back of the main chapel and behind the altar is a tunnel which leads to the right and goes into a simple room that would be for storage, and then another tunnel on the other side just over here leads to a couple more rooms abstractly connected together. Into this unlit and unnerving hallway gives you access to a couple more separate rooms. There's another entrance to this area on the other side, which is where most people would usually enter, over there by where the stairs are, and has some wider and simpler hallways to get here. So I hope you can see that the layout of this area down here isn't too confusing, even though that's kind of exactly how I meant for it to be designed as. And then now that we're back at the start of the crypt, right behind the stairs, which is where we came down from, we'll check out the last part of this build, which is one more level down, and perhaps a bit more scary than the level we're already on. These stairs lead down here into the catacombs. There are a couple tunnels to the left and right which go on for a while, connecting to some more tunnels to really give it the effect of some Middle-Age style catacombs. However, the one interesting part of this space is here in the middle, in which I have some kind of burial room. This room was a bit improvised, as it wasn't part of my plan, because I'm pretty sure this isn't something that's common in deeper parts of the church's basement, but I was inspired for the idea by those burial places of the Jedi Temple from Star Wars. See, even when you flick this lever here on the end, it creates a beacon which is able to go all the way through the build and out through the roof, which I was able to do through the clever use of some stairs and slabs that were in the way of the beacon. It's a small touch and not completely realistic or necessary, but since we're all the way down here and at the end of the build, I thought I could just get away with it by adding this unique bit of story to the otherwise creepy surroundings of the catacombs. And with that, we've tore through the whole place. I'm going to be referring to this video when I make other videos later of me going over the monastery as a whole, because I wanted to put a lot into this cathedral and also make a video that properly showcases it. I've only built a couple cathedrals before in Minecraft, though I've always found the architecture and the depth of these types of builds to be kind of impressive and fascinating. I knew that I would always end up spending way too much time building a cathedral of my own, so maybe that's what kept me from building another one for so long. And that's probably very much the truth, because I think I might take a small break before returning to add any more to this area. It would be a good idea to go back to working on parts of the city after this to keep the channel's content and my mind fresh. I know I mentioned in the last video that I would try to do monthly uploads now, but that is still kind of true, that I'm at least trying to do that. I'm also working on improving the quality of these videos. The time of making this video alone is rivaling the time I spent on the build, but I think it's alright because I'm enjoying making them and I'm at least proud with the result. Also, the last video I made in this style is outperforming any other video I've ever made on this channel, so maybe it's good for content too, not sure. And with that, that will be the end of this video. Hopefully I can get another one out a bit sooner, but we'll have to see about that. I want to thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you all later. Bye!